Hi, this video is about US national debt, which stands now at 37 trillions, believe it or not. And some very important things to know related. Okay, this is the number here, 37. You can see national debt. You can see with your own eyes. The internet address to the website is usdebtclock.org, and I suggest you make a bookmark and see with your own eyes. So here is the number. This is official site showing US national debt numbers and related numbers. And another very important related number here is right here, US federal debt to GDP ratio. US federal debt to GDP ratio, you see now 123%. It should not be more than 100%. Another number, very important number, is the US federal spending. Government is spending $107 billion. That's the spending, while collecting, about here's the number, US federal tax revenue. So the income, US federal government income in form of taxes revenue is 5 trillion, while US federal spending is 7 trillion. Income 5 trillion, spending 7 trillion, which results in here US federal budget deficit $2 trillion. Those are very important numbers. That's what we have a current debate, that the US federal budget deficit is $2 trillion, is increasing. All that continued federal budget is continue increasing the national debt. And here is US gross domestic product, GDP, 30 trillions. And the very important ratio that people pay attention is, and institutional investors and government should pay attention, and the debate is about the ratio of budget deficit to GDP. So the budget deficit is 2 trillion, GDP, gross domestic product, is 30. If you divide it 2 by 30, you get about 6.7 trillion, 6.7. You get about 7%, 6.7%. The ratio to US federal budget deficit to US gross domestic product is 6.7 or 7%, which is too high. It should not be higher than 3%, and that's the problem. And another way to measure it that is too high is US federal debt, the ratio of US federal debt to GDP, US federal debt to GDP ratio now 123%, too high. So what does that mean? Is the America heading to bankruptcy next year or this year? No, it is not. And the reason I'm making this video is for my own record, first of all, to be continue aware. There is no need to panic because the US dollar is world reserve currency. Most countries pay their debts or make transaction payments in US dollars. And US dollar, that's why even Treasury Secretary heard the saying, Secretary of Treasury said, I heard him today saying that US will never default on national debt. Why is he saying that? That's because US has a printing press. They can print more money. They have printing press to print more US dollar. The payments are made in US dollars, so all they need to do is just print more money, increase more dollars in circulation and make payments. You see, the US can do it for that very reason, because the dollar is world reserve currency. There's no better money at this time in the world than the US dollar. That's why if case of default is not the default, because they'll just print more money and make a payment in the dollar which they are printing. Eventually, if they one day, which will, if they were printing a lot, if the national debt will increase to 100 trillion, 125 trillion, let's say, while gross domestic product will be only maybe 35, 35 or 45, and the debt to GDP will be 350. That would be very high, but they still be printing more money and make payments, but the investor will probably demand greater yield to be paid greater interest, so greater in all their bonds. So if we see increased yield for no reason, apparently no reason, yields on bonds will be increasing, shooting up to 6-7%, that will be the signal that U.S. government is in real trouble, because that, and the inflation also increased because they print a lot of money. Then obviously the dollar will be diluted, the value of the dollar will be diluted, increase, inflation go up. When we see something like that, inflation increasing for no apparent reason, well, who know if they are very high debt, national debt, that's the reason. Government is printing more money, diluting the value of dollar, and the inflation increasing, and the bonds yield are increasing. That will know this, the U.S. government is in trouble. But at this time, there is no, it is not, this country is not, U.S. is not in that situation, not in trouble. There's no need to panic. It's just very important to every individual investor or whoever is interested about this matters of economics, understand there is no crisis. That national debt is not represent a crisis. No, we are not heading to bankruptcy anytime soon, because U.S. government will be just printing more money and make payments. And by the way, so you see this national debt is continue growing. See, 37. Just a few weeks I was seeing the number was 36.8, 36.9. Every 3 months, this national debt is increasing by $1 trillion. Every 3 months, it is increasing by $1 trillion, which means every year it is increasing by $4 trillion, which means the next year at this time, the U.S. national debt will be $41 trillion. Until next time. Bye.